Easily one of the most complicated and elusive skill sets in Path of Exile is the art of crafting mid to high-end gear. Knowledge of the crafting system will not only allow you to create items that exist nowhere else in the game, it will also help you save your precious and hard-earned currency by allowing you to avoid the sales price on some of those mid to high-end pieces of gear, while also potentially making you money by selling the items that didn't turn out how you wanted. Now, I know what you're thinking. Crafting is way too complicated to condense it all into one video without it being over an hour long. And that is definitely true, but what if I told you that the vast majority of middle tier and even some higher tier items are all crafted with the same exact methodology? And if you learn this method, you can craft almost any piece of gear in the game that you desire. This is the process known as metacrafting, and it is a lot more straightforward than you might realize. This video is going to focus on the simplest and most straightforward method of metacrafting while slowly adding in additional steps that increase the complexity and cost, but also yields the highest rewards. We'll go from how to craft an item with 3 to 4 guaranteed mods, all the way up to 5 guaranteed mods with 1 additional random one. I'll also show you how to decide and figure out what mods that you can create on pretty much any piece of gear that you want with this method, as well as how to finish it with a few extra steps on the item once you're done. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe, and without further ado, let's get into it. Now quickly before we begin, I do want to mention that there are going to be timestamps and chapters down below this video. This video is designed so that you can follow along step by step as you craft your item and come back and think about what you should be doing and what you should be thinking in each step along the way. Now to give you an example of some kinds of items that you can craft with this method, first we have these boots here. Now the idea behind these boots is that these are made to work with a very specific unique jewel that is very popular. You might notice that down towards the bottom it has that mod that says of the essence, which says 57% chance to avoid being shocked. This, plus you can get either like an implicit, or you can get like a jewel that gives you a chance to avoid being shocked, as well as this jewel Storm Shroud allows you to get complete immunity to elemental ailments with a single pair of boots. This is an extremely powerful effect, and to be able to buy a pair of boots like this, you could easily spend 4 or 5 divine. However, these boots can be made for around 2.5. And as long as you understand the method that I go about to figure out how I want to craft these certain mods on this pair of boots, you can create items like this yourself without too much hassle. Another example of how this works, but not exactly the same, is a bit of a more extreme example, because this one is a guaranteed flammability on hit ring. This method is slightly different, but it uses some of the same strategies that you're going to use for the method that I'm going to discuss in this video. Once you start to learn how this methodology works, you can start to break the rules a little bit and figure out other clever ways to be able to create specific items that you're looking for. Beyond that, you can craft other pretty powerful pieces of gear like this one here that has plus the level of socketed projectile gems and life regeneration rate, life, resist, as well as mana reservation efficiency of skills, and all kinds of other pieces of gear that are super impactful to your character, but might have been out of your reach previously. Now, one of the very first things that you're going to have to get familiar with is going to be this website called craftofexile.com. This website is going to be your best friend when it comes to crafting. Now, I'm going to give a quick explanation of how specific items in Path of Exile works before I start getting into the actual methodology. If you are a relatively experienced player and you understand how the basics of items work in this game, you can skip this section. However, for everyone else, let's do a little bit of an example here. So we're going to jump into here, create a new item. Doesn't really matter what we make. I'll just choose a strength helmet for now, but let's talk about the basics of items in Path of Exile. Each item in Path of Exile, unless it is some special specific item, can have 3 prefixes and it can have 3 suffixes. So this is the maximum amount of mods that any basic item in Path of Exile can have. Now, the most basic method of crafting is going to involve these mods called meta mods. You might have heard of these before, but maybe you don't exactly know what they are. These meta mods are going to be things like can have up to 3 crafted modifiers, prefixes cannot be changed, and so on and so forth. There are quite a few of these. These are going to allow you to manipulate items in specific ways and protect certain kinds of modifiers and use that to attach additional mods that you're looking for to your gear. Now, as for choosing which modifiers you want and which specific ones that you're going to be going for, we need to know one additional thing about how mods in Path of Exile work. Each modifier is going to have a certain set of tiers, and each of those tiers is going to have a specific weight. So if we're looking at helmets here, strength helmets, the same that we were looking at before, and we look at something like +2 maximum life, you'll notice that the weighting on plus the maximum life is 10,000. That means that every time a helmet drops, when it is rolling, whether or not it has a prefix, there is a 2.5% chance that you will get one of these mods of life. However, if we look at something like plus to level of all minion skill gems, you'll notice it's only a 0.6% chance for this mod to roll. That means that this mod is significantly more rare. So it would help us if we had a way to guarantee these significantly harder to obtain mods and then get the easier mods through RNG. And this brings us to the very first step of the actual process for crafting that we're going to be talking about today. And that is identifying the modifier that you want to be fractured on your item. Now, what is a fractured modifier? If we go into the crafting section here, if we go into the emulator, you might notice sometimes that when you kill like a giant rare mob, it drops a bunch of mods, and one of those mods has a weird color on it like this. What this means is that this modifier is safe on the item. You cannot remove it. So even if you use a scour, which removes all properties from an item, that fractured modifier will stay. That means that we can ignore this modifier and treat it as a safe modifier on the item. So this brings us to our first step. We need to identify on whatever item that you are wanting to create what is going to be probably the hardest mod to get on that particular item. So as an example, let's look at the pair of boots that I made on my Inquisitor before, the shock avoidance and life regeneration and chaos resist pair of boots. So if we go to boots here and we look at, say, just some straight strength boots, if we look at the base set of suffixes and prefixes, we will see that most likely the most difficult modifier to get is going to be chaos resistance. This modifier for each rank only has 250 weighting for us to potentially hit. The next modifier that we're looking for is life regeneration rate. These are the two mods that we have decided that we are going to be going for from the base mod pool. Now these are both suffixes, so what we're going to attempt to do here is we're going to attempt to create the suffixes on our item first and then protect those in some way, which we'll talk about in a moment, while adding on a few additional prefixes. So the first step is going to be creating a 4 mod guaranteed item. That means 3 protected suffixes as well as 1 crafted prefix. So on these boots, there is one additional mod that we need, however, and that's going to be shock avoidance. And you might notice that shock avoidance is not available from this base mod pool. This is where the second step of what we're looking for comes in. So the next mod that we're looking for, shock avoidance, is going to be an essence mod. Essences are a currency that when you use it on an item, it re-rolls the item and gives you 1 guaranteed mod. So since we need shock avoidance, you'll notice that this essence here, which is going to be an essence of torment, and if we use a maximum roll essence of torment, it gives us 56 to 60% chance to avoid being shocked. So this is a guaranteed mod that we can have on the item. So if we go back up here and look at the other 2 mods that we're looking to have on our suffixes, you can see that we've got either chaos resistance or life regeneration rate. Chaos resistance has a way lower chance of rolling on the item randomly. So that would mean that we most likely want to have fractured chaos resistance on our item. Now, this would change a little bit if you didn't want chaos resist. Say you didn't want chaos resist, but you wanted just normal resistance, right? Normal elemental resistances are slightly unique in the sense that you can change them to another element very easily with the harvest bench. So say that you wanted to create that same pair of boots that had life regeneration rate, a single elemental resist, as well as that shock avoidance, you would be fracturing the life regeneration rate for sure instead of fracturing the cold, lightning, or fire resistance. Because since you can easily swap these mods across, you've got, if you're taking tier 2 or tier 1 modifiers, you've got 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 weighting on your side that you could very, very easily hit. Whereas life regeneration rate is only 1,000, 2,000 for the top 2. So that has decided our suffixes for us. Let's go ahead and take a look over in the emulator how this is going to feel. So we'll restart, we'll choose a pair of boots here. We'll go with strength boots again, just to make this consistent. We'll come down here, decide our base. So when we're actually deciding the base of the item, it can be relatively important, but it's going to depend on which build that you're playing. If you're an armor build, obviously you're going to want to choose an armor base. If you're an armor energy shield build, you're going to want to choose an armor energy shield base. There are some particular unique bases, but this one in particular is not too useful. So keep in mind, when you're choosing a base, you'll want to make sure that you can handle the stats that the base needs, that it has the proper defensive mods that you're looking for, meaning like armor or evasion or energy shield, because certain mods can only roll on certain types of bases. And then lastly, you're going to need to make sure that the modifiers that you want, as you could see over here in the calculator, are going to be able to roll on your piece of gear. So if you're wanting to try to hit tier 1 life regeneration rate, you're going to need to see that it's an eye level 85 base. So as we look through these different bases, as you get up into the nicer and nicer bases, meaning the best one is the Titan Greaves, it's going to be more and more and more expensive to be able to get a fractured pair of Titan Greaves with the specific resistance or modifier that you're looking for. So for example, if we come over into the trade website here and we look, say, for, let's find Titan Greaves that have fractured, and you might notice that I put this tilde here at the front. If you put the tilde before you're actually searching for an item, it's significantly easier to find all of the modifiers that have fractured in it. So we're looking for fractured chaos resistance. Now, if we go back over to the tab here, we'll see that for fractured chaos resistance, Tier 1 chaos resistance, which is what I would want here, requires eye level 81, and it is 31 to 35 chaos resist. However, we are going to be trying to go for increased life regeneration rate, and tier 1 requires 85. So we are going to be looking for eye level 85 Titan Greaves. So we'll search Titan Greaves. We'll go down to the bottom here. We will look for item level 85 minimum. Now, Titan Greaves with fractured chaos resist tier 1 item level 85 or higher might be a little bit expensive. And as you can see, extremely expensive. We're starting out at like 1 to 2 divines for this powerful of a base. So what this means is that you're going to decide, do you really want this super powerful base? Or maybe do you want to pull back a little bit to save yourself some money? So if we go back and we look at the base items that we're looking for here, you'll see that there's also Volgreaves or Goliath Greaves. So maybe we try to search for Volgreaves and see if these are a little bit cheaper. And now we've jumped to Volgreaves. Now, if you could snatch this one up for 10 chaos real quickly, you should absolutely do it, because you'll see the price has gone down by about half. So instead of paying 2 divines, you can just lose a tiny bit of armor and save a whole divine. Now, if we go back here and search for Goliath Greaves, chances are they might be even cheaper. So a pair of Goliath Greaves are 75 chaos or 100 chaos, and you've only lost a tiny bit of armor on these. You have the same exact modifiers, the same exact eye level, and it is significantly cheaper. So now we found the base that we want to craft off of. Say it is just going to be a pair of Goliath Greaves so that we can save ourselves a little bit of time. These Goliath Greaves are level 85, and we'll quality them up to 20 quality. So now we have our base, and we bought ones with chaos resistance fractured, tier 1. So we've got tier 1 fractured chaos resist. So we'll fracture this modifier, and now this is our base. So as stated previously, we are going to be trying to get chaos resistance, life regeneration rate, as well as that essence mod on here. So step 2, now that we've got our first mod that's guaranteed, is going to be getting our second guaranteed mod, which is going to be an essence mod. Now, because of the limitations of here, I have to regal this so that I can actually use essences, but we were going to be using these Essences of Torment tier 1 to craft these boots. Now, to be able to buy tier 1 essences, we can go to the bulk item exchange section here. Say we have chaos and we want to go down and we want to buy those specific essences. They were Essences of Torment, right? We'll type Torment up at the top. We'll come and find these deafening Essences of Torment. And if you want to save a lot of time, you can buy these in bulk. Say if you want to buy maybe 10 at a time. This is going to make them more expensive typically, but as you can see, these deafening Essences of Torment are about 4 chaos each. That's not too bad. You can message this guy, hit max, direct whisper here if you're logged into the game, and just message a couple people until you get a few essences. So now that we've got those essences, we'll take these essences of torment and use them on the boots. Now the thing that we're looking for here is going to be that life regeneration rate. That is going to be our third suffix. Now this is an example where it might take a little while because we've only got 2,000 waiting out of a ton that we're looking for. And being able to hit that one particular mod, we can go and take a look here, is going to be for each suffix, we've got a 1.767% chance. So we have like maybe a 3 or 4% chance to be able to hit this mod. That means that on average, 3 or 4 times out of 100 essences will we be able to hit that modifier, meaning on average it's probably going to take 25 to 30. Now we will keep using these essences on here until we get the modifier that we're looking for. So this might take a while. I'm probably just going to skip forward, or I'll get it literally in 5 essences. We have exactly tier 1 life regeneration rate. Don't expect it to be that fast, but sometimes it will happen that way. So now we have our 3 suffixes. And as you can see, we have 1 prefix left on the boots, and that's going to be armor. So at this point, we have made our 3 guaranteed mod item, and we can get a 4th guaranteed mod for very, very cheap. So we will simply decide the prefix that we want to craft here, which say at this point is just movement speed. We want to craft movement speed on these boots because all boots do pretty much have movement speed, right? So we'll look here in the crafted mods, and we've got movement speed. We'll craft tier 1 movement speed, and we get 22% movement speed. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, a pair of boots, pretty much any piece of gear that you're going to be using needs life on it, right? And this is one of those particular crafts that really could benefit from an additional 5th guaranteed mod. However, there are a ton of items in the game that you can craft where just getting a set of suffixes done in this manner and then crafting your last prefix and maybe just being happy with it is going to be perfectly fine for a very long time. So this is the first step of crafting middle tier items. Now, if you wanted to, with an item like this, you've got your crafted prefix, you have 1 additional prefix, you could, for relatively cheap, just hit it with 1 exalt. Exalts are anywhere from 10 to 15 chaos right now. You would hit it with an exalt and hope that you got something good. Here, we ended up getting armor. So now this has 2 armor mods as well as movement speed. However, life regeneration rate, alongside that, you're probably going to want some life. So this is the first step, finalized boots that don't cost too much money. However, let's talk about taking it 1 step further. This is where you're going to start crafting middle tier items that start to cost you a few divines each. So these boots have these guaranteed suffixes on them. Now that we have gotten these here, as long as you are crafting on a fractured base, these 3 modifiers are 100% safe as long as you don't do something that destroys them. We can now continue crafting from this point without ever having to worry about damaging those suffixes. So let's talk about how we get our 4th guaranteed mod. So as I said previously, you will be using meta mods. If you see this mod that's right here on the prefixes that can be crafted, it says suffixes cannot be changed. That means that the next thing that you do will not be able to change the suffixes. Now keep in mind, not everything respects meta mods. However, most things do. Things like essences do not respect meta mods. However, things like harvest crafting or various types of currency, meaning things like chaos orbs or veiled chaos orbs, which is our next step, will respect this modifier. So now we need to figure out what is going to be our 4th mod, and the easiest way to get a 4th mod, pretty much guaranteed, is going to be through veiled modifiers. Now, what veiled modifiers are, if you've ever talked to June before, you might have seen, if you've done some of her missions, they drop these items, and those items have some little squiggly lines on them. You come to her, you click unveil, and it gives you a set of different modifiers that are available on that item. We are going to be using something called a veiled chaos orb to force one of those modifiers onto our item. So we can go back to the calculator, we can scroll down for a little while, and you'll see on the left and the right, we've got these veiled modifiers that are available. Now, because we have already filled all of the suffixes on the item, we don't have to worry about any of these showing up. We are guaranteed now to get a prefix on here. So if we look through the list, the most attractive mod on this set of modifiers is easily going to be movement speed here. Movement speed up to 30% is actually pretty hard to come by. The other modifier that would be okay would be life, right? Now life here is not ideal, movement speed would definitely be better. However, if we also go and look at the normal crafted modifiers that we can do and we scroll down to life, you'll notice that the base craft of life goes up to 70, whereas the veiled version of life only goes up to 60. So if we want an additional veiled modifier, we're probably going to want to be going for movement speed here. So this is where things can start to get expensive. every single time that we are going to be doing this veiled modifier, you are going to be required to spend 2 divines to craft suffixes cannot be changed. So on this pair of boots where we have already gotten our suffixes and we have 1 open prefix, we can craft suffixes cannot be changed. Now at this stage, you might have full prefixes. It could potentially happen. It would be very unfortunate, but it could. If you happen to have full prefixes and you are on a fractured item, you can save the suffixes by using Eldritch currency. So if you look at these various kinds of Eldritch currency, you'll notice that they have very specific modifiers and very specific things that they do. And if we look at specifically the Eldritch Annulment Orb, it'll say if the Searing Exarch is dominant, remove a prefix modifier. If the Eater of Worlds is dominant, remove a suffix modifier. So say for this example, we have our suffixes that we want to keep, but for some reason, we just managed to unfortunately get completely full prefixes and we don't like our prefixes, right? These prefixes are bad. And now it's like, well, I can't craft suffixes can't be changed, so I can't continue with the next step. However, this annulment orb says if the Searing Exarch is dominant, remove a prefix modifier. So we can add 1 Searing Exarch modifier to here, and all of a sudden, we can hit an annul on here and start taking off these prefixes. And now we've completely cleaned prefixes off of here. However, you don't need to take all of them off like I just did, you can just take 1. So now we have this open prefix again, and we can start with the next step of crafting. So we can put our suffixes cannot be changed on there, and then this next step is going to be getting the veiled modifier on here. So we will use a veiled chaos orb on the item, and you'll notice that it gets this little squiggly line here. However, don't unveil it immediately, because we need to talk about one more very important thing about how items work before we continue, and that is going to be blocking modifiers and modifiers that share a role. So if we go back to the calculator here and we look at the veiled modifiers that are here, you'll notice that there are a variety of ones that are available here, and they will have different kinds of weights. So you'll notice that the unveil percentage chance for one of these movement speed modifiers is 1500 weighting. That's pretty big. There's also going to be like 1000 down here for a mana roll, 1000 here for a life roll, some like increased evasion while focused, some increased armor, and then you'll notice this one here that says weight NA, unveil percent NA. That means that this modifier is not able to be obtained naturally through unveiling in a normal way. You have to get this through naturally unveiling an item that drops on the ground. So what we want to do here before we unveil this item is we want to block something that we don't want. Out of all of these mods, the modifier that has the highest weighting that we don't want is going to be this modifier right here. This modifier is a mana modifier, but you might notice that it says regenerate life first, right? It says regenerate life and maximum mana. And you might think, well, that modifier is a little bit different, right? Like it has like regenerate life and such on it. However, it does share a slot with normal mana. So if we go to here and we craft maximum mana on the item, you'll notice that a couple different modifiers disappear now, right? You see how this is lined out here? And if we go to veiled modifiers, you'll notice that this regenerate life per second and maximum mana is crossed out. That means that only these modifiers will be available. And if we look at the calculator, you'll see that now that means that we have a pretty high chance of hitting the one that we want. Currently, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modifiers that are available, and 3 of them are good, meaning that unless we very unfortunately got all 3 of the ones that we didn't want, which is a super duper low chance, we're guaranteed to get some movement speed here. So we'll come back to the emulator now. We have our mana blocked, which means that this can't be the mana mod anymore. You'll notice it's lined out, like I said before in the veiled mod, and when we hit unveil, we are almost guaranteed to get movement speed. And as you can see here, we've got 100% chance to avoid being chilled and 27% increased movement speed. So we've also got that life mod here, but we're looking for the movement speed. So now we've got movement speed. We would simply go to the crafting bench and we would go ahead and craft life if I can find it, even though I'm blind here. So we would craft life. And now you have, oh, that's not a good life roll. Come on, let's get a little bit better one. 69, nice. And now you have a 5 mod guaranteed item. You've got your 3 suffixes that you guaranteed with the fractured mod, the essence mod, and then rolled until you got that 3rd one. You protected those, and then you did an unveil for the movement speed that was available, and then you crafted your last modifier. So now you have a couple of options. You can either leave the item like this, or if you don't plan on doing anything else with it, simply hit it with an exalt and get something, right? right? Plus to armor is pretty good for these pair of boots. That's perfectly fine. You still have an open prefix, and you can modify your prefixes or suffixes endlessly with this Eldritch currency. Now, the next step would be finishing these implicits. The easiest way to do this is simply just going to be using whichever tier of ember that you want, and using it on the item until you get what you're looking for. Action speed is what we would be looking for here. And then for these particular boots, we would really want to be getting something like chance to avoid being shocked. However, we probably need a higher tier of that modifier. Now, you can go for whatever modifiers you like. On my personal build, the one that I went for is life regeneration rate, and there you go. My boots are mostly done. You can put whatever sockets you like on them, whatever links you like on them. One particular thing that a lot of people don't actually seem to know about is that if you take an item that, say, we can grab this evasion helmet that I have here, right? Typically on items in general, when you're rolling something, the color of the sockets is matched to whatever base stats they have. So if we take this item and we get it up to 4 sockets, and then we start hitting it with chromatics, you'll notice that it's mostly green almost every single time. But what if this particular item, you need it to be like 4 off colors? That could be pretty expensive, right? Well, it turns out that it's really not. Now, you could come over to the bench here, put the helmet in, you're like, well, I need 4 red sockets. So why don't I just use 120 chromatics like 5 times until I get 4 red sockets? That's the best way to go about it, right? Or maybe even just do 2 red sockets a whole bunch of time until I get 4, right? Not particularly. So the actual best way to do this is going to be manipulating the sockets themselves. So let's do 2 red sockets here. That will guarantee 2 in the first and second position. And then what you can do is you can manipulate these sockets one by one. The way that the bench works is that as you take and remove sockets, it keeps the sockets that are already there. So if we choose 2 sockets, you'll notice that it comes down to 2 sockets, but it guarantees those red ones are still there. If we go up to 3, well, we got red, but that's not exactly what I wanted. If we go up to 3, we've gotten that green one again. We'll go back down to 2, and it always keeps those sockets in the first position. So we simply just do this over and over again, going from 2 sockets to 3 sockets until we get the color that we're looking for, which eventually and hopefully is going to be red. And then once we've gotten that 3rd red socket, we'll do the same exact thing with 3 sockets to 4 sockets until I get it on the first try. But we'll go from 3 sockets to 4 sockets until we get the last final color. Now beyond this, you can, quality the helmet, you can do whatever else you'd like with it, finish your implicits, and so on and so forth. But for the most part, the helmet that we would be crafting would be finished. So that is the main strategy that you are going to be using to create pretty solid middle tier to potentially even higher tier items. Now, as I said, this strategy can work on almost any item in the game, as long as your item has a singular modifier that is not an influence modifier, meaning it's like not Shaper, not Elder, Crusader, Hunter, Warlord, or Redeemer. If it has none of those, then you can guarantee 1 basic modifier on the item, which is going to be from these base mods here. This mod fractured on whichever base that you would want. You can guarantee 1 essence mod, whatever that essence mod might be if you need a very particular one. Then you can guarantee, through just using a bunch of essences, a 3rd base mod if it's a prefix or a suffix. And then you can get a veiled mod as well as a crafted mod and then a random mod. So if you decide that your build needs a certain type of resist, a certain type of life or energy shield or evasion or armor or anything else, or the guide that you see that you're following has something like that on it, now you have an idea about how you can pinpoint and modify individual modifiers on each piece of gear and get essentially almost any item that you're looking for. Now, one final thing that I did want to talk about real quick is going to be harvest. This is going to get a little bit more complicated, but I did want to simply mention it here. In a future crafting video that goes a little bit more in depth, I'll talk more about this. However, harvest is a particular crafting method that allows you to force certain kinds of modifiers on your gear. And the way that that works is that you'll notice that there are these different type modifiers here. You'll see attack, caster, chaos, cold, critical, defense, fire, etc., etc. If in particular, the modifier that you are looking for, that 4th mod, which is either going to be a prefix or a suffix, after you finish your prefixes or suffixes, these modifiers have certain tags on them, as you can see. Like movement speed has the speed tag, for example. So instead of doing a veiled mod, if you wanted to, you could use harvest, say if you wanted to like force chaos resist on a belt or something like that. You could do the same exact thing if you finished your prefixes and you really wanted chaos resist on it, and chaos resist is the only mod that has chaos tag on it from all of your suffixes. You could do something like, say, create a pair of boots. Let's just remove all these let's remove all these suffixes real quick and I'll show you. So we have, say, just another random prefix on here, percentage armor. We've got our prefixes. We would do prefixes cannot be changed, right? The crafted mod prefixes cannot be changed, which will protect our prefixes. We could go in here to harvest, do chaos, and then do chaos reforge. This guarantees us chaos resist. However, there's a bunch of different tiers of chaos resist. The reason I didn't really include this in like the main idea is that this one gets a lot more random and it gets significantly more expensive, but I did just at least want to mention it here as an option that you can use. But as you can see, when I keep redoing this here, you can sometimes fill all the suffixes, you can sometimes get really low tiers of chaos, or you could just get the super high tier of chaos. But it is another option that you can use instead of the veiled modifiers. And that is going to be it for the video. Now, this is truly just an entry level into meta crafting type video, and I wanted to try to keep it as simple as I possibly could. I know I went pretty in depth there on a lot of things. However, the next steps going beyond that get significantly more and more and more complicated. However, everything that I told you in this video should allow you to start to reason with the different modifiers that are available, see which ones that you can force onto certain pieces of gear with either harvest or veiled mods and such, and start to work towards those 5 or maybe even 6 mod items that have every single modifier that you're looking for. Potentially in the future, I will make a more in-depth meta mod crafting video that goes all the way super deep into those modifiers. But as I said, I wanted to keep this video a little bit more straightforward as not to overwhelm you and make the video well over an hour. So remember, boys, if you enjoy this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in Raid class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.